Welcome students, welcome class, okay? We're in session. Today we're going to be discussing velocity banking for those who make income via biweekly paychecks. This is a struggle for a lot of folks to really wrap their heads not just around the concept of velocity banking, but the actual application of it as it relates to, well, I'm looking at your case study, Denzel, and that looks like someone that makes monthly income or weekly. Can you show bi-weekly? So I had a few clients bring this to my attention to display the income going in on a bi-weekly basis as opposed to how many of the case studies that we see online, including my own and my own videos, that we're showing the whole entire income of someone's finances going into the home equity line of credit, credit card, personal line of credit, business line of credit, whatever that may be, right? So give me 1 second here. It looks like my LinkedIn stopped recording live. Is anyone on LinkedIn? Let me know. Let's do this. It says, do you want to end the broadcast? Okay. Sorry for the little delay there. Let me know if I'm still live on YouTube. Let me see a couple comments. I do see 22 people in the house, and it looks like it just froze on me. Darn it, man. I'm gonna wait for a comment before I go any further, just to see if I'm live. Had the same issue yesterday, man, with my live stream. I don't know what's going on. Technology's not being fun. I started on time today, but it looks like I'm having a little issue. I see someone just liked. Okay, Robin says I'm good. Hello. Okay, so I'm good. We're live, but I'm not live on LinkedIn. Sorry for those people who are just watching on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, that just canceled out on for whatever reason. All right, so back to what I was saying. A lot of you are learning velocity banking. A lot of you are implementing, you're taking action with velocity banking, and there's a nice group of you right here that are making income bi-weekly. But when you look at the case studies, you're seeing us, myself, Christy Van, others that are showing the overall income in a month going into the line of credit, overall expenses coming out of the line of credit. And you're like, it's a little hard to follow. So today we're gonna focus very, very in-depth on the day-to-day, looking at a case study, someone making bi-weekly paychecks, what that looks like, money going in, money coming out, so you can see the flow. It's not going to be a huge difference from previous case studies. It's the same thing. All I'm doing is showing even more focused, more accurate numbers, I should say. And I always let you guys know that when I'm documenting these real life case studies that I put on the whiteboard, I'm intentionally creating errors on purpose so that there's room, there's gap, because velocity banking is volatile when you're doing it, right? So sometimes the numbers you map out may not be the case because of, again, the user. How did you actually spend money that month? Did you spend more money that particular month, or you spend less money, right? So not every single month is going to be cookie cutter. So what I typically do is I will underestimate someone's total income. I overestimate their expenses. I underestimate their cash flow, right? Even though I'm showing down to the penny, right, in my numbers and whatnot, I'm still creating intentional errors just to allow that gap. And what that ends up doing is it makes velocity banking look worse, the results, when in reality and in actual application, the client's doing much better. That gives them a huge boost of confidence for sure. And it also allows for the individual to make errors without feeling terrible about it or account for months like December, New Year's, during the summer months, when we're either spending more money in the birthday months, in the holiday months, things like that. So we're accounting, or in my case studies, I'm accounting for all of that. So thank you all. Appreciate the comments. If you have questions as I'm going through this particular case study, go ahead and comment right away and I'll address your questions. With that being said, class is in session. Let's begin with the 4 major numbers. Got a case study over here, husband and wife. We're just looking at husband's income. Wife is not even included in the income. I would say this, one thing to consider, and this is what this person is considering. This will not typically happen overnight, but over time, I would highly consider you get spouse's income on board, that you guys combine incomes into one central location, preferably one checking account that's connected to your debt tool, the home equity line of credit, the personal line of credit, the business line of credit, wherever it may be. When you have all income sources going to one location, it does create more efficiency. It does improve the strategy long term. But I totally understand when there's one spouse watching all the content, the other one is not that involved. So what this person has to do, you, the one that's watching, where your spouse is not, say, on board or wants to keep their income separate, we just need to produce results. 90+% of the time, once we bring results to the table, hey babe, car's paid off. Credit card's paid off. Hey, this is paid off. Hey, this is paid off. When we start showing a behavioral shift in the whole economics of your household, then they start to say, oh, that's nice. Oh, that's done. Oh, okay. Oh. Now they want to get on, because now you can say, hey, if you were to get involved, whether you give a half of your paycheck, 25% of your paycheck, it's going to increase my results by X dollar amount. You're able to present facts, right? Present the details, present results. That's going to help spouse get on board. But if we try to convince them, sell them, persuade them, all these different things, typically doesn't work on women. Men, typically yes, but most women don't get convinced or persuaded right away. We kind of have to ease them into it, right? We have to show the results, right? We have to present things in a way that matter to them, frame the conversation in a way that matters to your spouse more than the numbers itself. Sometimes it's not the numbers that's going to convince spouse. Sometimes it's what comes of it. Hey, I'm going to be able to spend more time with the kids. Hey, I'm going to be able to take the kids to school and you can take 2 days off. Now that these 2 cars are paid off and the credit cards are done, I don't have to work 10 extra hours a week overtime. I can dial that down to 40, 50-hour weeks, which means I'll have more time to spend with you on the weekends. When we're able to craft that conversation away, I'm telling you, it's going to be a game changer for your personal finances and just, overall how you go to sleep at night. Okay. So 4 major numbers on the board. We're dealing with $7,215.89 bi-weekly. That's broken down into $3,607.94 net paycheck. Okay. Total expenses are $4,681.96. We have a healthy cash flow out the gate. This is prior to even doing velocity banking. Okay. Another key gem takeaway before you even start velocity banking, before you get into it. Okay. There's something called pregame work. I came up with this idea of velocity banking pregame work. There's so much content out there showing the strategy itself and how powerful it can be when implemented. Yet there are tons of people who go right into it with the wrong tool, too high of an interest rate on line of credit. They don't know the full mechanics. They start making mistakes. They end up going into more debt than what they expected because we didn't handle the pregame work, the foundation building. So there are 10 plus steps, right? I have a playlist called Velocity Banking Pregame Work. I think there's about 10 or 11 videos in there that you can watch, and it's going to highlight all of the pregame work that you can do without even introducing velocity banking. We're going to pay down debt. We're going to increase credit score, increase your cash flow, reduce expenses, get your mindset right, get everything perfectly calibrated for this particular method. You're able to do, and there's so many scenarios where we do all that pregame work, and then we may not even need to introduce velocity banking because of how much we were able to do with the foundation, that sometimes we can skip over velocity banking right into infinite banking. Sometimes that's the case, right? Or maybe it's a combination, velocity banking, infinite banking together, right? Or maybe it's none of the two. Maybe it's just straight start a business, create more income. No velocity, totally fine. Maybe just using credit cards, right? So another big gem there. Total debt, $235,000. Here's our debt tool, our main debt tool. We have a home equity line of credit, second position, $50,000. 8.25% is the interest rate. Here is the breakdown of 4 debts outside of the mortgage, 4 debts that we're dealing with, 2 credit cards, 2 loans, right? This is the balances owed. Here are the monthly payments. Here are the interest rates. And then these numbers right here are the cash flow index scores. If you do not know what the cash flow index formula is, all I am doing is taking the balance of a debt and dividing it by the monthly minimum payment, and you get a score. The lower that score is, the more attractive it is to pay off that debt, okay? In the debt snowball world, if we were to tackle these debts in the form of debt snowball, we would start with lowest debt to highest debt. So it would be 4,000, the 95, the 14, and then the 42. That's how that would work. In cash flow index, it has you skipping over the smallest debt because it got a 39.21, and we're going right here to the 95 at 21.92. Then it has you going to 33.33, 14,000. Then it has you coming over to the highest debt, 42,000, and then finishing it off with the smallest debt, 39.21. That's kind of weird, right? But from a cash flow perspective, you would gain more cash flow faster without velocity banking. If you were to take this 2533.93, instead of sending it to this 4,000, cash flow index would say, send it here first. If you went in this order, right, 9,500, then jump over to 14, then go to 42, then end at 4,000, you'll get out of debt faster than debt snowball. The only argument or leverage that debt snowball has is the philosophical perspective, not necessarily a mathematical one, but the philosophical perspective that the average person will build more momentum. They'll stick with the plan longer by starting with the smallest debt and working your way up, creating that snowball effect. Okay? If we were doing debt avalanche, the first debt that we would tackle would be the credit card for the 14,000 because it focuses on highest interest cost, right? So highest interest cost, debt avalanche, that one first, then the 42K, then the smallest debt, $4,000, and then ending at the loan for 9,500. That, in my opinion, is the slowest way, right? So when we look at cash flow index formula, it is a great measurement stick to determine how you will apply velocity banking. So when you run cash flow index formula, this gives you a guideline, not necessarily law, but a guideline, in my opinion, as to how we will do velocity banking. So first step, know your numbers. Got that. Second, what's our debt tool? The HELOC, second position, $50,000, 8.25%. Third, cash flow index formula. Let's analyze the debts. How and which ones are we going to go after first? Now we need to determine our chunk range. What's our chunk range? Students, how do we develop this? How do we come up with it? So what I do is I take the credit limit of the line of credit that we're dealing with, and I times that by 66%, okay? So that is what I call my leverage rules. And then we have leverage capacity, okay? Everybody's leverage capacity will be different, but the leverage rules should be a strong, consistent guideline. No matter how much income I'm dealing with, no matter how much cash flow I'm dealing with, I'm always following my leverage rules. What are the leverage rules? We got two very, very important rules within leverage. 66% of the line of credit, or 2/3, you can say 67% or 66, whichever number you feel most comfortable with. So it's either 2/3 or 66%, right? Then that number would be 33,000 right here off of 50K. And then we take cash flow current, not what you're gonna have, cash flow current, what we're currently at before starting velocity banking, cash flow times 12. What does that equal? 30,407.16. This is picture perfect. Look how the cash flow in correlation to how much debt we're leveraging is about 12 months of future cash flow. So all velocity banking is doing at the end of the day is what debt snowball or making extra payments does in a whole year. It is taking all those extra payments that we would do over a 12-month period, and we're bringing all that to the very first month. That's it. Pretty simple. And there's some nuance, some variation in that. We'll get into it. But now we have our chunk range, anywhere from 30,407.16 to as high as 33,000. Look how picture perfect that is. Now, if this person had a $500,000 home equity line of credit, the gap just widened massively. And this is where we need to display some responsibility, and this is where leverage capacity would come into place. For example, if we had a $500,000 home equity line of credit, 66% of 500 grand is 333,000, and their cash flow is only 30,407 per year. So, to help you decide, should I chunk 333,000 just because I have a HELOC for $500,000? Yes, no, maybe so, I don't know. Right? My answer every time I'm working with a client is, I don't know, let's run the numbers first and let's look at our rules. Okay? So, one of the ways to determine your capacity to leverage that 333,000 is you ask yourself this mathematical question, which is we take our current cash flow, 2,533.93, right? Divide it by 66% of the line of credit. So 333,000 divided by 2533.93. So if you were to chunk $333,000 and you have cash flow today of 2,533, you are effectively, mathematically, leveraging 131.41 months of cash flow, of future cash flow. Break that down by 12. You are leveraging about 11 years of future cash flow. Stop right there. Think about it to yourself. Am I willing to risk 11 years of future cash flow to achieve a particular result. Chances are, if we have a $500,000 line of credit open and available, and you're considering making a chunk of $333,000, more than likely that's for an investment, maybe not so much debt elimination, or it could be a combination of both, right? So you have to ask yourself, am I willing to put 11 years of future cash flow at risk? That is a lot that we're putting at risk. Would you agree? Right? Comment below. Would you agree? Yeah, putting 11 years of my future cash flow at risk. If this goes south, if this investment goes wrong, I invest $333,000, right? Then I'm gonna set myself back 10 years from progress, essentially, right? Like we can foresee that. With velocity banking, no matter what you do in velocity banking, there's always a level of risk. How do we mathematically reduce the risk according to our personal capacity to handle that debt? On average, it's typically 12 months of future cash flow, right? And you can be even more conservative by doing what's called micro chunking. You can chunk every 3 to 6 months of future cash flow, speeding it up in the present, right? So when you do micro chunking, you're able to control the amount of interest you pay on your debt tool, reduce it dramatically, and you reduce the risk dramatically. The results, on average, will be faster than the extra payments because you are simply taking what that snowball extra payments would have done over that 6-month period of time, and you're fast forwarding it to the first month today, right? So coming back, I'm going to delete this little zero here, right? We're dealing with a $50,000 credit line. So far, we know our numbers, we know our debt tool, we know what debts to attack, in which order, according to cash flow index formula. We have our chunk range. In addition to our main debt tool, we also have a 0% credit card for 18 months with a 3% balance transfer fee with a $25,000 credit limit that we could also use for debt elimination. The last thing, to have clarity with who we're dealing with on the whiteboard here, and for yourself, no matter what videos you're watching on YouTube, whether it be mine, Christy, Kana J, Kwok Brothers, whomever, as it relates to the velocity banking concept, you yourself, before you get convinced by me, persuaded by me, sold by me, or content creators like me, please take the time to really sit and decide, what is my goal with this strategy? What would I like this concept, this method, what these gurus are teaching me, what would I like it to do for my household, right? And in the velocity banking world, there's pretty much two options. Either I want to use the velocity banking concept to eliminate debt faster, or I want to use the velocity banking concept to increase income, okay? And third option is both, right? You want to increase income and you want to eliminate some debt. So you can do a combination of both, right? Now we can maybe spend some time on that. I can show you what that could potentially look like. All right. So we've got our framework. We've got the context. Now let's look at daily application, what we decide to do together. All right. So with myself and the client, we decided together to do the chunk of exactly 66%, 33,000, and we're going to pay off debts pretty much in the order of cash flow index with a little variance, okay? And I'm going to tell you, and I'll share why I feel this way. So of the 33,000, right, and I'll map this out together. We'll stick with the calculator. I instructed the client, we're going to go ahead and pay off the $9,500. We're going to skip, right, that small debt. We're going to go to that 33.33, 14,000, right? Skipping the smallest debt, right? According to cash flow index, the next debt I should tackle would be the bigger debt for the 42,000, 37.94. Now, here's where my nuance comes in, and I kind of revert back to debt snowball just a little bit. And I told the client, I said, look, whatever we chunk at this point, at this debt, it doesn't pay it off, right? And again, kind of leaning on that psychological piece there, momentum, performance, dealing with a person here, not a robot or a spreadsheet. I'm dealing with a person. So I'm also factoring in the human factor here, human error, that if I can get the client to pay the 95 off the 14 and the $4,000, I can say, hey, that's 3 debts paid off. That's 3 payments off your list. That is a big, big, big confidence boost. So I'm going to skip over that last debt, even though cash flow index told me to go after it, over the smallest debt. So that's 27,500. Three debts gone, right? What do we get? 420 plus 102 plus 433, 20. So that is a cash flow gain guaranteed $955.20. Not bad at all. Okay. Well, I'm still not quite at 33,000 just yet. So what would I do with that? 33,000 minus 27.5. You're left with $5,500. Yes, now apply it here, right? So instead of applying 9,500 toward here, as cash flow index would have me do, I'm going to simply do 5,500 toward that loan principal. So 5,500, 42,429.45 minus 5,500 would bring the balance down to 36,929.45. That's one option. Or to create even more velocity with the HELOC, right? These are options. You can play with this. Ultimately, I think they produce the same result, pretty much the same, but I think having that initial boost with the line of credit, considering that this particular debt, I'm not going to pay it off either way. So what if I took a portion of our chunk, which was the $5,500 number, and let's say we took that 5,500 of debt from our HELOC and actually made the payment for the month that we're in. We're looking at August 2024, right? What if we just satisfied the payment and then the rest went to principal? So 5,500 minus 1,118.12, right? So then 4,381.88 would go towards principal. The other 1,118.12 satisfied the payment for August, right? Satisfied the payment, which means that my expenses for the month of August are going to be $1,118.12 less coming out of the HELOC. So I have this temporary cash flow boost from my normal income and expenses and cash flow. Did you see that? You see the difference there? So we could either send 5,500 and still make the 1,118.12. So technically you're sending more money to that loan for the month of August. So you can do both, right? You'll definitely pay it off faster because you technically sent more money, right? But for the sake of dealing with a newbie in velocity banking, sometimes what I like to do is have the client use part of our chunk to actually satisfy the payment only when we're dealing with a debt that we're not actually paying off in full with our chunk. So far, our first chunk, 33 grand, we paid off 3 debts for sure. That means that very same month, especially if we're dealing at the beginning of the month, I received that cash flow now, 955.20 guaranteed. All right, so somewhere around 37,000 and some change is what we'll be at on the loan, right? I made the payment. I no longer have that payment. Now, here's what we do. Velocity banking. I'm going to take you back in time as we're live right now to August 27th. I'm going to take you back in time, take you when the first day we actually start velocity banking, right? And I'm going to show you how statement cycles typically work as it relates to our credit cards and HELOCs and that sort of thing. And we're going to go day by day and try to map out the estimated interest cost of what we're dealing with, right? So the way the paychecks are set up for this person, we're getting paid on August 2nd, we're getting paid on August 16th, we're getting paid on August 30th. August happens to be a 3 paycheck month. So that's going to give us another boost of 3607.94. Technically for the month of August, our income was not 7,215.89. It was 7,215.89 plus 3607.94. Not bad. All right. So we got the chunk money coming out on the same day I get paid. This is another standard guideline, not necessarily a law, but I'd say a very, very healthy standard guideline. The best time to make your chunk payment, whether it's from a line of credit, PLOC, HELOC, whatever it may be, all in one, first lien, second lien, whichever it is, the most efficient day to make a chunk payment is the day you have the most money in your bank account. When is the day or days in a month where you have the most amount of money in your bank account? It's typically the day you get paid. In this case, we have 3 opportunities in the month of August to make our chunk. Now, obviously, the sooner the better, no doubt. So keep that in mind. The sooner the better in terms of making my first chunk. And if I'm trying to be efficient, setting up my base and foundation, all the pregame work done, great. Then we can actually set a scheduled date, that date being the day you get paid. In this case, it's August 2nd. That's the day we're going to get paid, right? To make our first chunk payment. So 33 grand came out of the checking account, right? Let me do my famous triangle, right? We got the checking here, the HELOC here, and our bills or debts there, okay? So income comes in, right? Boom, lands in your checking account. Before you spend any dollar of that income, before you spend a single dollar, you're going to move money out of your HELOC to your checking account. That would be our chunk. That 33 grand, that's going to be used to pay our debts that we're going to eliminate. The 3 and then partial of the 4th. All of it. Hear me clearly, please. Some of you missed this step. This is vital. Some of you think you're doing velocity banking. I talk to so many of you. I'm like, inefficiency, inefficiency, inefficiency. Nope, not doing it correctly. Nope, not doing it correctly. I'm constantly running a clinic over here on my YouTube channel, and I think that's because there's a lot of misinformation online. And you know, that's the downside of learning online. Okay, you're gonna have to deal with that. So you're gonna have to take that extra time to really study, right? And I want to do my best to never provide misinformation or lead you astray. So I try not to leave out details, which is why my videos are so darn long, because I'm trying to cover all of the details. And even then I may miss some, but I'm trying to make sure you're fully equipped before you go into this thing, right? So all of that income, where does it go? It's got to go into the HELOC. It immediately satisfies whatever the payment would have been typically on that HELOC. So no payment will register. By the time the payment does register, it was already satisfied. That is why we do that. That's one key factor. Second is interest costs. The moment we pull 33 out, you're immediately getting charged interest. Now, you can delay or reduce, I should say, that interest on 8.25%. You can reduce that by simply sending all of your income right into the HELOC the same day before midnight of that day. So August 2nd, 33 grand came out, boom. 360794 went in. Same day. That would mean I'm going to get charged interest on $29,392.06 at 8.25% as opposed to $33,000 at 8.25%. It doesn't make a huge difference, but over a long period of time, it definitely makes a difference, right? These are multiple days that we're getting charged interest that we could reduce that number by. Pretty powerful, okay? So 33 grand, paid the debts. Where did the debts go? They're now in the HELOC. So question for you. When I get a debt tool, here's what the naysayers say is that you're basically going into more debt. You're getting more debt to pay more debt. No, we are not. Mathematically, we are not doing that, right? If I have a $50,000 line of credit and I owe $235,540, do I now owe $285,000 of debt? No, because I have not used the 50 grand yet. Now, if I take the 33 grand and I pay off 3 debts and a partial of the 4th, how much debt do I still owe? $235,540. Nothing changed. Not yet. So I did not increase debt. I did not decrease debt. All I did was move it from one location to another, and I'm going to pay less interest. I'm going to have more of my dollars work stronger for me, which eliminates the debt. It's a game of interest. That's what it is. That's how we get speed. Because if all the numbers are the same, it's a matter of who pays more interest. If all the numbers are the same ingredients, same person, same discipline, same mindset, same everything, the only difference is who pays more interest. That's it. It's a game of interest. So I moved the debts into the HELOC. My income is in the HELOC. Now I need to pay bills. Now, for the month of August, our expenses went from $4681.96 down to $2608.64. Why? Well, I'm no longer paying $955.20, and for the month of August, I don't make that payment of $1,118.12, right? For that month. Okay? That's what happened. So you add that $1,118.12, add the $955.20, minus it from $4681.96, you should get that number, $2608.64. Okay, so now it's August 2nd. Now here's where I made an intentional error. On August 2nd, I'm illustrating us pulling out $1,408.64 at once, right? In the actual application of Velocity Banking, ideally, you want to withdraw money, especially as a beginner, every 3 to 5 days. Another guideline, every 3 to 5 days to accommodate any expenses over the next 3 to 5 days. And so you'll find yourself pulling money out of the HELOC at least 5 to 6 times a month on average, especially if you're biweekly. Okay? And there's ways to strategically align your bills as far away from the due date as possible and money in from money out, right? It's possible. I'm not going to show that right now because I want to just give you the basics, the principles, foundation. Once you get the foundation, you can then add more enhancers, what I like to call them, right? So we got income went in, reduced the balance $29,392.06, okay? And then expenses came out $1,408.64. Of the $26,08.64 of expenses, $1,200 of that can be run on a credit card. So outside of what's shown here, we have another credit card, zero balance, nothing owed, where we can run bills on a card, get 2% cash back. Now, if we display proper discipline, my friend, okay, as long as you have proper discipline and can track the expenses you're running on credit cards to pay bills, to get cash back rewards, and to reduce your borrowing costs on the home equity line of credit, as long as you have discipline and good tracking, I'm all for it. Do it. Now, if we assumed that we were going to run $1,200 on a credit card to run your bills every single month and pay it off in full to avoid interest, but at the end of the month you ran $1,800 on the card, we now have to reflect and see, hey, wait a minute, we only allocated for $1,200. You told me your expenses were this much, but now we're running $1,800 on the credit card. You increased your expenses by $600. You decreased your cash flow by $600. You did nothing. It did not help you to add that specific enhancer of a credit card to run bills, to get the cashback rewards, to reduce interest on your HELOC. Whatever you did with that $1,800 got destroyed by the simple fact that you spent $600 more. Even though you got cashback rewards, even though $1,800 more stayed in the credit card for 25, 28 days, whatever it was, you still spent $600 more. That's not efficient, right? So that's taking us in the wrong direction, right? So that's a gem there. Take that for what it's worth. Moving right along, this person displays discipline. We're going to run bills on a card, the same $1,200 every single month. We're getting 2% cash back. We're getting $24. That's $24 less every single month that's coming out of the HELOC to pay that credit card off. So instead of paying $1,200, we reduced our cost of living by $24 every single month moving forward. Not bad. Okay? That earns you a few dollars in savings and interest, which means more cash flow. More cash flow means I get out of debt faster. Even if it's $1, $2, $3, I still get out of debt faster. Right? And you compound that over the amount of time it takes us to get out of debt. It creates massive results. Right? Pretty powerful. So that's the breakdown of the 260864. 140864 of it is cash bills. The other 1200 is bills that can be paid with a credit card. Right? So now 140864 came out. It's August 2nd. Right? Intentional error. We're at 30,870. Times that by 13 days all the way till we get to the 16th. Right? So you count August 2nd. Let me just make sure I counted right. August 2nd to the 3rd, 1 day. Right? So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yes, so I did it right. So 13 days, right? It's technically more days, but in terms of charged interest days, it's 13 days between the end of August 2nd to the day August 16th, but without calculating August 16th, because on that day, income comes in, so you have to readjust what that new interest will be. So for 13 days, owing $30,870, I will pay $90.50. Now, here's where a lot of people that disagree with velocity banking, when they show their calculations, where they make errors sometimes. The $90.50 daily interest, right, that's getting charged to the HELOC, I'm not getting charged on August 16th $90.50. That doesn't get charged until the first statement due date, which would be September 2nd, right, or September 1st, 28 days later. That's when the interest gets charged to the HELOC, right? So that's important, because if the 90/50 got charged on the 16th, technically you'll end up paying more interest, right? Because now that's part of the balance. So that's important. That's a game changer. That changes things up. So we got $90.50 for 13 days. It's now August 16th. What happened? Income came in, $36,0794. Brings the balance down to $27,192.76. Principal, 100% of my paycheck. Principal. This is why I tell you guys all the time, dump all your income into the line, because it'll be 100% principal on that day. If you wait, not only did you pay more interest, but some of that, right, won't be 100% principal anymore, right? Because you waited, because you paid a bill and then you sent the rest into the line. In that case, all you're doing is extra payments, my friend. You're not really doing velocity banking, right? That's going to be key for a lot of you here. So balance is at $27,192.76. So count August 16th to the 30th, another 13 days. Again, without counting the 30th, right? Notice how the interest is different now, because the balance is going down. So for the first 13 days, it was $90.50. The next 13 days of the month of August, it's $79.90. All right. And to close out the cycle, August 30th, 31st, 1 day, September 1st, right? 2 days. On the 30th, I get paid $36,0794. Brings the balance down, $23,584.82. Times that by 2 days of 8.25% on this new balance owed, $10.66. So add these three numbers. You pay roughly, more or less, about $181.06. Let me ask you a question. Did I pay new interest, or was this pre-existing interest I was going to pay anyways? This $181.06. This is another error I think some people make that don't agree with velocity banking, is they inform us that we're paying more interest. Well, if we're doing it the way that just was described here, I'm not paying more interest. I'm paying interest I was already going to pay over here at 29.99, at 17.4, at 14.99, at 20.91. It's the same interest. It's just now way less. 181.06 is probably in that 420 alone, right? So for the month of August, I pay $181.06 in interest, and I had 100% of my income principal pay down the initial chunk of 33 grand. Okay. So now we move to the next month. September will be just 2 paychecks. So we had a nice little boost in August. It was a 3 paycheck month. I think that happens twice a year for many of you that are biweekly. So September 13th, and September 27th are our next two paydays. Notice how I'm showing expenses at 380864. Why is that? Because I'm including August credit card bills. Remember how we ran $1,200 on the card? Okay, well that card is not going to be owed until September, right? So what ends up happening, this is what gives Velocity Banking another boost, is not only are we efficiently relocating high interest debt to a lower interest rate environment, not only are we doing that, we're also dumping all our income into that new location where our debt is at, and our income is reducing the daily interest that it gets charged. In addition, we're prolonging our expenses. So now there's a roughly 30-day lag between when I go grocery shopping and fill my tank and pay for my subscriptions and pay for my bills. It's like a 30-day lag, right? So August, we create our first lag month where $1,200 is lagging behind as time goes on. So now we're in September, $1,200 is due for August. In September, I run another 12. It won't be due in September, it'll be due in October. It creates this healthy lag, which creates more cash flow for the person doing Velocity Banking, which helps them pay off their debt faster. That alone gives you an extra couple months ahead of extra payments over the long run. Not bad. Okay, another little gem there. Comment below if you're getting a lot of value from this. Let me know if I'm on the right page, if I'm moving at a nice, healthy pace for you, especially those of you who are listening that are bi-weekly. Right? So September 13th, we now owe $27,574.52 on the line, right? Because at the end of August, another intentional error I created to just allow the results to look less, right? But it'll actually be better. So we end August with a balance of $23,584.82. Add $181.06 to that balance. You're now in September. Moving forward, you're getting charged interest at that new amount, right? What I did was I added 380864 to the 23,584.82 number and the 181.06. You should get 27,574.52 minus income 3607.94. Here's your balance, 23,966.58. Now, you should times this number by 11 days at 8.25%. What I did was I took the higher number just to create like error. So 27,574.52 times 8.25% divided by 365 times 11 days, you should get that number, 68.55. So for 11 days, September 2nd, right, through up to the 13th, without counting the 13th as a day, we're at $68.55, right? September 13th, count that day to September 27th. Without counting September 27th, you should get 14 days. 3607.94 on the 27th goes in, so the balance is at 20,358.64, right? Times that 14 days, right? So you should get 64.42, then add another 4 more days, okay? And you should get $18.40. I already took expenses out at the very top of the month, even though that's not what's happening, right? And then there's one more key thing that we did with this client is, remember this credit card here? It's 0% for 18 months. I bet some of you were like, when's he going to include that? I very strategically waited, right? Because by now, the balance on this loan is somewhere around $37,000 owed, right? With this specific credit card, we can do what's called a convenience check, 0% for 18 months, pay a 3% fee. We have a $25,000 credit limit. Could we use the whole $25K? Sure. Would I? Me, no. I think it would violate my rules. It'll violate our capacity to handle that. So if we did $25,000 times 2/3, that's $16,500. We could roughly do anywhere from $16,500. Right, I'm going to delete my famous triangle here for now. Give me some space to work with. Stay with me. Stay with me. All right, I know this is a lot, but we got a $16,500. That's 66% of 25 grand. The other thing that we could do is take the balance of the debt that we're trying to hit divided by 2. That's 18,500. And say, okay, our chunk range could be anywhere from 16,500 as high as 18,500. Let's go with the 18,500. Times that by 3%. That's 555. So for the month of September, when this debt is due again, the $1,118.12, to keep my cash flow still high for these 2 months initial, I could use the debt of this 18,500, right? 18,500 minus 1,118.12, 17,381.88 satisfies the payment for the month of September and ultimately reduces the balance principally by 17,381.88. So to be conservative, I'll round the number up, 38,000 minus, say, 18,500. So we'll probably owe somewhere around 19,500 on this loan, right? So we got slashed in September. We owe somewhere around 19,500. And we don't have to make a payment from our income because we use debt to make the payment, right? And we took 20.91% and we put it into a 0% environment, and it only cost me 3%, 555. It only cost me 3% to do that. That's going to be a massive, massive amount of money in savings just from doing that alone. And then we're just going to pay the monthly minimum payment, 18,500, 3%, right? And then times 1% of the balance. So our cash flow will decrease by 190.55. Our expenses go up by 190.55, right? So for the month of October, well, before I get to October, just closing out September, we had 11 days, $68.55. One paycheck went in on the 13th. A second paycheck went on the 27th. We paid 14 days of interest, right? $64.42. And then you have September 27, 28, 29, 30, right? If I'm not mistaken, 30 days in September. Yep. So 4 days, 1840. Add those 3 numbers. We should be at 151.37, right? On the home equity line of credit. With me so far? So now 190.55. Mind you, expenses came out, right? Let me just rerun my math. So 23,584.82. That's where I was in August, ending August. I'm going to add my interest, 181.06. Add expenses, 38,0864. should have gotten that number. Minus income, 360794, 23,96658. That's what you should have gotten. Minus income again, because I already accounted for all the expenses for August, right? So minus 360794, 20,358.64. Cool. Add interest, 151.37. So we're at 20,510.01. That's our balance going into October. I know it says the 11th. I'm just going to write for right now. 20,000 going into the month of October at the beginning. 20,510.01. Now, looking at expenses, we're at 2608.64 plus. Now I'm going to actually count the 190 minimum payment. So I'll round up, say 195. Then I'm going to add now 1,018.12. So we're at 39,217.6. I'm going to create an intentional error by showing expenses coming out all for the month of October to overestimate interest costs on purpose. So 20,000, 510.01. So here's where I'm at. 24,431.77. This is helpful when you do this. It lets you know, ideally, where should I be at according to my 4 major numbers on the home equity line of credit. So when you show all income going in and expenses coming out, you'll be able to see, okay, here's the highest balance I should have in that month, and here's the lowest balance I should be at in the month, and I should end somewhere in the middle there. And if that doesn't happen in 30 days, then we get to go back and see, oh, well, Mr. Jones, Mr. Smith, looks like you spent more money. So we have to practice more stewardship and discipline with our actual cost of living. Your lifestyle, what does it actually cost to live your lifestyle in the month of August, in the month of September, in the month of October, right? And we map that out very strategically. So 24,431.77 is the highest number it should ever be in the month of October. And then we're going to minus income on October 11th, 360794. All right. So 20,000, 823.83. October 25th, money goes in again, 360794. 17,215.89. At this point, once you have at least 2 months of data where you can look at your HELOC statement, look how much interest you paid, look at the first month, look at the second month of doing velocity banking, see what the difference is in interest costs. I can make a very healthy estimation here based off history without having to do all the math. 181.06 minus 151.37. On average, my interest cost is decreasing by about $30 without even factoring in the $24 a month that we're getting in cashback rewards. Without even factoring that in, I'm saving about $30 in interest. So I could say for the month of October, our interest costs probably be $120. That's very, very conservative, right? To draw that analysis. Now, in October, we have an interesting opportunity that we could consider. Another gem. Put this in your notes. Another gem. We don't have to what? We don't have to wait all the time when doing velocity banking to hit 0 on the line of credit before making your next chunk, because there's an opportunity at hand right in front of us. If the balance is 19.5 in October, that's overestimated, and we already have an increased cash flow of 955.20 guaranteed. Let's look at it. 955.20 plus pre-existing cash flow to begin with, 2,533.93. We're now at 34,891.13 times 12 is 41,869.56. So we could chunk higher than 33,000. This would be the only case where you can violate my rule, is when your cash flow times 12 is higher than 66% of your line of credit. That's when you have permission to chunk a little higher. So if 41K is our new max, let's just say, and we owe 17,215 at the end of October on the HELOC plus $120 in interest, what if we did a chunk of 19.5? Brings me up to 36,000 owed. So our second chunk is only less than 3 months later. August, September, October. Technically, you could say November, right? So be conservative. So November, you chunk 19.5, pays off the remaining of that balance, and we get a guaranteed cash flow gain of 1,118.12. You shift the rest of 20.91% to 8.25% guaranteed savings. No one's going to argue this, right? 20% is more than 8.25, and 8.25 is not 8.25 because we don't pay 8.25 when doing velocity banking. It's more like half that number probably, right? So November, out the gate, we're back up again, 36,835.89 with a new cash flow of 1,118.12, right? And then you do velocity banking, it's going to go even faster to pay off the line of credit. And if we just healthy estimate here, take that 955.20 pre-existing cash flow, 520 plus pre-existing cash flow, 2,533.93, and add 1,108.12. New cash flow, 4607.25. Not bad. So we're at 4607.25 in cash flow coming in now. So I'll round down, say $4,600. If all you did was make extra payments, 36,835 divided by what? $4,600. 8 months. 8 months or less. 8 months or less. No velocity banking. 8 months. With velocity banking, less than 8 months. To bring the home equity line of credit to 0. Fully paid off. And all 4 debts are gone. So we could say 8 months plus 4 months. It took us 1 year or less to eliminate all these debts. Not bad. Right? And here's the other beauty. We remained liquid the entire time. Unlike making extra payments 100% of your cash flow towards debt elimination, if an issue arises over the next 12 months, where are they going to dip from? If they don't already have an emergency fund, okay, so they liquidate their emergency funds to handle that emergency. So now no emergency funds, that delays your debt elimination timeline because you have to revamp your emergency funds. Whereas over here, with a $50,000 home equity line of credit, I don't even need to touch my emergency or savings funds, right? This could be my replacement. I remain liquid the entire time. If something does happen within the 12 months, right, there's always plenty of equity available in the line of credit. Hence, leverage capacity, leverage rules. Super important. Got to follow it. Okay? So that is the end of the lesson today. Hopefully that was extremely valuable for many of you listening, tuning in, paying close attention, looking at how you can improve efficiency here, how you can get better with the strategy. And this is also an eye-opener, also helps you decide whether this is for you or not. I would say the vast majority of people, it will take them a much longer time for the vast majority of Americans to fully grasp this concept. It's going to take time. That's why I say pregame work, pregame work, pregame work, pregame work. I don't want to just throw people in velocity banking and hope and pray that they make a change just because the numbers say that they'll do better. That doesn't mean that they will do better, right? All right. I'm going to start from the top, work my way down, look at some questions, and we'll send you on your way. So Chano says, Denzel, you're a blessing, been subscribed 3 years, now in the position finally to execute velocity banking via the HELOC. Thanks for educating us about the ultimate debt elimination tool. Wonderful. So notice how this person, 3 years, not doing velocity banking, watching a velocity banking channel. That's okay. I think that's awesome. I would rather this person wait that time frame, not doing it until they fully get it, they're fully positioned, picture perfect to get started before trying to force it. Then they end them with a 13% HELOC when they could have got something for less than 8, and they, mess themselves up. And then those are the ones that become my client because they went online, they saw the other people before they came to me, they saw me, they saw what I was doing, they saw the difference and the amount of time that I'm dedicating prior to even doing velocity banking is so important. I would even argue many of the times the person that's not doing velocity banking, preparing for it, will go faster than the newbie, the amateur that jumps right into it, just gets any HELOC they can pull off the market, any line of credit, any credit card they can pull off the market, and they try to do it, and they end up spending more money, they end up burning through cash flow, not really understanding which direction to go in. And on top of that, they pay for coaching, right, which sets them back even more. Does the interest rate make a difference on the HELOC, variable versus fixed? If the interest rate is the same, then no, right? So if a variable rate HELOC is 8.25% and a fixed HELOC is 8.25%, the interest is the same, right? It's the same, but that's typically not the case. Typically, a variable home equity line of credit will start off with an intro rate or start off at a lesser rate and then eventually go up, whereas a fixed rate will stay fixed. Where the variable gets an opportunity to be better than a fixed is in the beginning and maybe in an environment where interest rates are going down, right? So in my humble opinion, I don't think now is the time to be getting a fixed home equity line of credit in 2024. I don't think that's wise because you're basically locking in what we would think today is a high interest rate. So you're already locking in a high interest rate in the highest interest rate environment we've ever been in God knows how long, right? So I would not do that. Go back in time. If it was 2020, 2021, and maybe 2022, it was the perfect time in history to lock in a fixed home equity line of credit for 3-5 years at 3-4%. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing, right? For a lot of those folks. And we're getting a ton of results. And if you were smart and wise, you paid off your dang HELOC and you paid off your debt. If you were unwise, what happened was you were lazy because interest rates were low and interest costs was low. You were lazy. You know who you are. And 2020, you wasted. 2021, you wasted it. 2022, you wasted it. 2023, interest rates started to go up. 2024, interest rates went up and your fixed home equity line of credit expired. You went from a 3 to a 9 and your payment tripled. That's why HELOCs get a bad rap. It's because of the user. The users are using it incorrectly. You're abusing the tool. And also not 100% your fault, but the banks aren't exactly teaching you how to use these tools to your advantage, right? Bianca, I have a 0% 12 months on a credit card. I'm putting all my expenses on it and only paying the minimum. How am I going to pay all that before the 12 months are over? Am I going to chunk from my PLOC? Ideally, yes. But again, Bianca, as I mentioned earlier, as it relates to using credit cards, you are doing it incorrectly right now. So what you're doing is you're running as many of your bills as you possibly can on the credit card. So that's a thumbs up. Cool. The part where you get a thumbs down is the part where you said, I'm only paying the minimum. That's incorrect. Cannot do that, right? So what you're doing is you're increasing your leverage capacity, and you're probably going to max out that credit card eventually where you cannot use it anymore because you've used up all the credit limit, right? And now you're paying the monthly minimum on that card for the 12 months, and you're now wondering, how am I going to pay this off? Well, what you just did was you created debt out of thin air. You could have just ran all those bills through a checking account and not have the issue, right? So that's where I'd say, like, that's where you're making an error. You're doing it wrong. Now, where you could be doing it more efficiently, right? I'm going to erase part of my board here. Okay. Here would be more efficient, Bianca. And I'm just going to use an example that you gave. 0% credit card, 12 months. What you should have done or should consider, we can course correct. We can fix this. That's the beautiful part, is we can fix this. Ideally, I would stop what you're doing immediately, right? And let's say we went back in time for Bianca. Let's say we went back in time for Bianca. She's got this 0% credit card for 12 months. And I said, look, Bianca, we're going to identify bills that are consistent, bills that I could maybe switch from monthly to annual. And if you have a 10K limit, we're going to use my leverage rules. We're only going to use 6,600. And the goal here is to create temporary cash flow. So whether it's for 2 months or 3 months, until I reach 6,600, I will stop running bills on the card, then pay the monthly minimum for the 12 months. And because you ran 6,600 of, say, annual expenses would be first. And then any bill that I can switch from monthly to annual, because that actually saves money. We have to remember, ladies and gentlemen, are we saving money when I do this, or am I guessing and hoping that I save money just because I'm at 0%? That's the trick. That's the temptation. You have to realize the temptation that's at hand here. There's temptations all around us. And then there are tools all around us. If we can put aside the temptation and just look at the tool for what it is and match it up with, are we saving money? Then you receive the reward of using the tool efficiently. You get the job done faster, right? So this is what I would have done for Bianca. One of the things we could have done is simply find her annual expenses or any monthly expenses that we could switch to annual. That means the bill is now gone for those 12 months. That means cash flow gain for those 12 months. That means that cash flow gain goes into her PLOC. That means 12 months from now, we have space. We have equity in the PLOC to satisfy expenses because they were expenses. It was my lifestyle. Anyways, I saved money by running the bills through the card, getting the cashback rewards, and reducing the actual cost of living because I switched from monthly to annual and I saved money on the bill itself and I got cash back rewards. That would have been more efficient. So that is a huge course correction that Bianca can make, and many of you that did not ask the question that are doing what she's doing. Many of you are. I deal with it all the time. A lot of cases. Not everyone, but a lot of cases. Okay? I'm dumping the cash flow into my other debts during these 12 months. Yes, okay, that's fine. So maybe I might have jumped the gun here. So just so I understand. Let's see. I don't know what to do exactly. I hadn't thought of that idea. You're going to chunk payment for the 0% credit card. Okay, cool. Once you pay off the entire balance with the HELOC because it will have a lower interest. If I was in your shoes, I would have called the credit card issuer, asked them for convenience charge. All right, okay, yeah. Yeah, so we just have to make sure that Bianca was running the bills on the credit card at 0% for 12 months, but only for a period of time, not for the full duration of 12 months, and not leveraging the whole credit card. Because now, if she forgets 12 months from now, or if she makes too many chunks with the HELOC, right? She has to make sure that by the time we get to 12 months, there's plenty of space to handle all those expenses that we just did. Because what she did is she is creating a major lag in her expenses. That's what's happening. Creating a major lag, and then in 1 month, 12 months from now, she's gonna have a big expense bill, all the expenses for the month that we're in and all the expenses to the previous month. Sometimes that can be a little weird. As long as we do it correctly, I'm okay. All right, cool. All right, thank you. Yeah, make your chunk payment. Monthly cash flow, I wouldn't go any higher because you have 12 months. Yeah, cool. This is excellent, love it. Cassandra, should we include annual tax return in the repayment of the HELOC, or should that not be included in the projections to pay back the HELOC? No, absolutely. So if you're referring to just taxes in general, like paying taxes in general at the end of the year, if you're a business owner, yeah, that's part of our expenses. That's an expense. Tax is an expense. So we're factoring that in our expenses, our monthly expenses, even though it doesn't come out monthly. I'm still factoring it in because that gives me a true cash flow number for the whole entire year as opposed to month to month, because it varies month to month. If you're talking about taxes owed on the property taxes, that money sits in the HELOC. It'll come out of the HELOC to pay the property taxes. But same thing, we're still accounting for it as an expense. Anything and everything that leaves my checking account is what? An expense. So we have to count it. If we don't count it, we get blindsided, and there's 1 month where we spend more money, but we didn't actually factor it in with our chunk amount. It messes us up, right? So repayment. Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. Boom. Okay. Great session. Big picture. What are some of the risks, if any, to be aware of in velocity banking? So definitely went over quite a bit of risk in velocity banking. As long as we stick to the general guidelines and rules that I initially set out, we're going to reduce the risk. Not going to 100% go away, but it's going to reduce the risk dramatically of what we're doing. So again, leverage rules, leverage capacity, velocity banking pregame work, foundation, knowing your numbers, true cash flow, underestimating income, overestimating expenses, underestimating cash flow to come up with our chunk range, to come up with our strategy. You are putting yourself in a very, very healthy position overall, okay? So right here, right, all that pregame work that we did initially, super important. Okay. All that makes sense, of course correct, beautiful, awesome. Yeah, and whatever you've done so far, right? So you're receiving the benefit of whatever you've done so far, Bianca, on that credit card. You're receiving the benefit. Let's secure the benefit by not abusing that tool. Keep paying the monthly payment for the time being, because now that I know with new evidence that we have a PLOC. So I'm assuming we owe money on the PLOC, get the PLOC down as soon as fast as humanly possible. When that hits zero, we then get to decide, okay, I'm 2 months away from the credit card expiring. I used the temporary cash flow gain to pay off these other debts to get more cash flow, and then I paid my PLOC off. So now, before I chunk at another debt, I'm gonna make sure that I pay off the credit card that was at the 0% so I can secure that win. It's very important, ladies and gentlemen, that when we're doing velocity banking, that you secure the win. Prime example, going back to this case study here. If all this guy did, right? If all they did was the initial chunk of the 33 grand, you do realize that if all they did was make extra payments back to the HELOC, that they're going to get out of debt faster than the person just making extra payments without the HELOC. Just that alone. So it's vitally important that you all secure the win. I think a big error that a lot of people make with velocity banking is you try to do velocity banking the whole way through, right? Secure the win. Treat velocity banking like a light switch. Know when to turn the lights off when you leave the room. Know when to turn the lights on when you enter the room. Okay? That's what mom taught me raising, right? When she raised me, she said, hey, shut the light off before you leave the room. Ain't nobody in there. Don't need to have the light running. Many of you, when you're doing velocity banking, especially with your mortgages, you're doing velocity banking too long, right? So if you got a 3% mortgage and you're doing velocity banking with a 7% HELOC, okay, you're going to get some steam for sure, say at the beginning of that 3% mortgage. But you don't want to do velocity banking for the full duration of that 3% mortgage. Eventually, you need to turn it off, secure the win. You're already ahead. Now just make extra payments and you'll get out of debt faster, which is why almost no one in the velocity banking space is talking velocity banking and debt snowball combined together. Not even I was doing it when I first started, but over the years I learn, I get better, I improve. And what I'm telling you is velocity banking is at a point now in its history and credibility and reputation that can it stand alone by itself? Sure. There's so many case studies where that's the case. I would say, I think for an even bigger amount of people to enter this space in a non-risky way is to say, hey, velocity banking versus debt snowball or velocity banking and debt snowball. I think when you put the word and, it takes away with trying to compete, which is better, keep my 30-year mortgage or switch to a first lien HELOC. Why not both? There could be a scenario where both, where it's like you keep your 3% mortgage, have a second lien HELOC, do the work that's required, shut the lights off on velocity banking, snowball your way out of it, and yes, now you're paying your home off in 5 to 7 years or less, right? And you're getting what the gurus say. I think that's powerful, super powerful, right? So that was some of the risk there. Corenzo, thanks for all the work you do. Has completely changed me and my family's outlook on life, financially speaking. That is awesome. Glad to be of service. Grateful as ever, Denzel. God bless. Awesome. Excellent. Keep up the good work. Appreciate it, Cassandra. Treat velocity banking like a light switch. Know when to turn it off, turn it on and off. Wise advice. Yeah, you almost won't hear very many people talk about that, right? Because sometimes we get stuck in our echo chambers where we're trying to compete. The truth of the matter is right now, velocity banking has increased in popularity tremendously, okay? Velocity banking is now, I want to say it'll in the next 5 years or less, it's going to increase market share tremendously. So I think right now in sales and business, they talk about, once you get to 2% of the market share, there's usually like a massive jump to like 10% or something like that. I forget how the math works, but I would say that velocity banking, when you combine all the amount of views and subscribers across all the platforms in the last 2 years alone, really after COVID, it has dramatically jumped in popularity. Dramatically, without a doubt. And that's with the help of people like myself, Christy Van. You got other people getting on the scene, the Kwok brothers. They recalibrated their YouTube channel, right? They were talking a lot on politics and faith and kind of educating folks on what's going on in the political space, and they weren't doing a whole lot of velocity banking content. Now they've ramped it up. So you bring them back into the picture. You got VIP Financial, you got Connor J. Wallace, and you got about 5 or 6 other smaller channels. Ask Me How I Budget. There's another dude I just found, bald head, I don't know his name, Hack Your Finances. That's the name of his YouTube channel. Shout out to him. And you've got other YouTube channels that are in support of velocity banking. It's not their primary topic, so they're in support of it. That's bringing major credibility. And now we've got banks that are actively creating content promoting velocity banking to use their HELOC products. So now you got the backing of banks, the reputation from them, the reputation from outsiders supporting velocity banking, and like it or not, we're getting even more attention from people who are against velocity banking. I can't tell you how, I think in the last couple months alone, there's been about 5 or 6 new channels popping up, 4K, 10K subs that are creating velocity banking content against velocity banking. So they're speaking against it, saying that it's a scam and all that stuff. I totally get where they're coming from. But I do see that they're leveraging the trendiness of the words velocity banking. They're leveraging it to their advantage to attract people to them so that they don't get HELOCs and maybe get loans instead, right? So you have that battle going on, whether we like it or not. And that's what it is, right? Now, I've always been the type that says, look, I'm not beholden to velocity banking. I will use it when it makes sense, and when it doesn't make sense, I'm fine. I'm okay with that. Let's continue to have fun. Let's make sure we have a strong financial foundation and base to rely on. That's key. Very, very important. All right. Great advice. Thank you. Thank you. When using velocity banking with Snowball, should you leave any money in your bank account as a buffer? You can do that. That's another, say, precaution, right? So what you can do, Sherry, is you still dump all your income into the line of credit, and then you take money out for expenses and you treat your buffer like an expense. You could do that. So as long as we're still sending all our income into the line, I'm okay. The other thing in regards to our pregame work is you can simply do one of the baby steps of establishing an emergency fund large enough so that when we do velocity banking, you still have money over here in savings, in a high yield savings preferably, earning 3, 4, 5%, right? And that's money you don't touch. And then any new money moving forward is all dedicated for velocity banking. That money over there helps you sleep at night so that if you lose your job, we have money over there and we still have money in the line of credit. I would still have you use the money in the line of credit to buy time, and you can shift savings into the line to buy time. I think that's healthy. Let me go back. Also, should you keep using one credit card for your expenses or pay from bank? That's a personal preference as well. I personally have 1 to 2 credit cards that I use, maybe 3 on average, to run all my bills and expenses. I pay it off each month like clockwork, doesn't change. So crazy that I came here to ask you about the velocity banking with the snowball method, and that's what you were talking about when I joined the live. So cool. Yes, glad to be, good timing there. I can remember you were the first content creator I saw working velocity banking back in 2020, changed my life. paid off debt, but it also allowed me to help my parents with their finances as well. Okay, and with that, I will close out. Class is over. God bless you all. If you want to work with me one-to-one, click the links below. Work with any one of my partners as it relates to Velocity Banking, Infinite Banking, get your finances in order, creating financial freedom, building that strong base. Check the links below. If you want to support this channel, you want to give, right? You just want to give. You want to support the work that's been doing here. I'm running a ministry all day long. I love it, right? So if you want to support the channel, I've got a Patreon link below in the description as well, or you can give right through YouTube. I forget how to do that. It's like right in the live chat or something like that. So whichever you prefer, whether you want to give or you want to collaborate, you want to get on my YouTube channel, you want to share your story, you got a testimony. I love when other people can speak on this as well. It brings more credibility. It brings more alignment to the space overall, and it lets down people's guardrails and allows them to be more open-minded, to look at the math, set aside the emotion, look at the math, logically decide if this is right for you or not. If it's not, that's okay. I coach a ton of people that are not doing velocity banking right now, and they hire me, right? Because I understand that world, I understand this world, and I can say, hold on, don't go. Hold on, wait. Or I can say, proceed, proceed, proceed. Let's increase. Let's have some fun. All right, God bless you. Look forward to having one-to-one discussions with you all on my calendar, and also potentially meeting in person. I love doing that with clients. And then I'll be, am I going live tomorrow as well? Yep, so I'll be live tomorrow as well. We'll be doing infinite banking, right? Game changer stuff, all right? Have a wonderful day. God bless, and we'll be talking soon.